The ASU-TV studios in the School of Media and Journalism, this is A-State Connections. And hello everyone, welcome to A-State Connections on ASU-TV. I'm Jonathan Reeves, an academic advisor at Arkansas State. The next performance of the A-State Department of Theater is coming this weekend at the Simpson Theatre on the Fowler campus, on the A-State campus. Or the Fowler Center, rather. The performance is a play that A-State students put together called Imagination Unleashed. Telling us more about this today is Assistant Professor of Theater and devised facilitator of Imagination Unleashed, DayDay Robinson. Welcome to A-State Connections. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Jonathan. I'm super excited to be here.
We are so happy that you're here today. So tell us about yourself and how you came to Arkansas State.
Yeah, so I graduated from Texas Tech with my MFA in Performance and Pedagogy, and this was in 2020, and right before I was graduating is when COVID really hit, and I was supposed to originally be doing a fellowship at a professional theater for a year in DC, and then everything shut down, and so I was applying for jobs, and then I got offered this position, and I was talking to my dad. I was like, but I wanted to go out into the world for 5 years and such, and he said to ultimately teach. So you get to do what you want to do sooner? And I said, yes, and then that is how I ended up here.
Well, but you know, in that, you're talking about all the challenges that are kind of associated with all of that stuff and that, and then you're having to try to be able to teach something that is, you know, very much together in a remote environment. I bet that was extremely challenging to be able to do that.
Yes. I remember that first class, we were doing creative improv online, and I remember with the students, I was like, guys, this is the first time I'm going to be teaching online. This is the first time you're going to be learning something like this online, so we're going to be learning together. And I bonded with that class so much because of the fact that we were all learning together and figuring things out of how we do art on Zoom.
Right. But you know, that was one of the things, though, is that we did see at that time a lot of that where you had people that were on different Zoom, Zoom screens, and were trying to do various things and all that, just try and shake it up a little bit. So that way it was something that was a little newer as opposed to just kind of recycling the same thing over and over again. Challenging, but also definitely interesting, and probably brought a new way of presenting theater in a way that hadn't been presented before. Yes,
and it also, I want to say, like, industry-wide, it made theater more accessible. You'll see now theaters are actually recording some of their performances, so people with disabilities or people who can't afford their tickets, they have better access to these after a while of filming, and of course, after they get off of their production, they will put them on site, so now people can have access to those performances that they otherwise would not have. So I think it changed how we look at the industry and what's accessible to people.
And I wonder how it continues to evolve and change and all that, so it's really, really cool. So you were talking about how you bonded so closely with those students. Do you still have some of those same students that you kind of started off with?
Yes, so no, actually the class I came in with graduated last fall, so they graduated in fall of 2024, of spring of 2024, but I am still in connection with all of them, and all of them are working at different theaters or doing something within the field, and so they're always sending me messages like, can you look at my audition tape? Can you, does this look fine? I'm like, yes, go ahead, trust yourself, you got this. And so I still have a connection with them, but now it's more of a mentor, peer, and co-collaborator versus student and professor now.
Right. So being an on-stage performer and being able to do the things that you have done, and then of course going into now directing, professor, theater and all that, how, obviously there's differences there, but how is being an on-stage performer, how does that help you become a good director?
Yes, so when being on stage, I feel like sometimes when people think actors, we think sometimes that actors could be selfish because we're like, oh, it's me, what am I doing with this role? But this idea with a director who doesn't fully, and a lot of things that people don't understand is directors don't typically always just tell an actor what to do. They're there to look at the whole picture. Is everything coming together? So actors themselves still have to come up with their motivations. They have to give directors something to look at. And so being on the other side of the table, I was able to, well, the other side of the stage, being on the stage, I was able to kind of understand how things look to an audience. I was able to understand what emotions are being communicated. I also understood how, as a performer, what I needed from my director. So when I switched to directing, it was kind of easy for me to adapt to different people's personalities, because sometimes I have 10 cast members, like, and for this show, I have 10 cast members, and they all have different needs and personalities, and it's like, how do you, as a director, then adjust to everyone's need while still teaching? Because when I'm at the university, I'm still teaching. It's still a class that they're a part of when they're in a performance, where if I was directing professionally, my actors are coming in, they know exactly what they're doing. I'm just like, yes, that looks great, or can we move this here? Where with my students, I'm still teaching them too. I'm acting coaching, I'm directing, I'm a mentor, I'm like several different things all wrapped up in one. And I think being a performer, someone who has the ability to adapt, made it so much easier for me to move into directing.
So before we talk about the performance, I want to ask about how you balance all of that, because I imagine that is just very challenging to be able to do that, and very rewarding when you're able to see everything finally come together. But how do you make that? How do you balance everything and be able to work with all that out?
Yeah, so either some great time management skills or some poor time management skills. I don't know. But I also, one of the things I do is I like to, like, I literally say, like, I'm going to take off my directing hat really quick and I'm going to be an instructor. So if a student does something where I'm like, okay, as a director, this is what I need you to know. As a professional, when you go into, as a professor, I like to let them know, when you go into the professional field, you want to make sure that when you're responding to, even as simple as how do you reply to an email to accept a role. And like, where our students who know us, they're just like, oh yes, I accept. And I'm like, but if you were doing this professionally, how might we do this? And so I always just go, I'm taking off my director hat right now, and I'm just gonna put on my instructor hat so I can help you, on your way to professionalism, because that's what we're striving for, is that when they get out of here, they are doing professional work. And in fact, the class I teach, professional practice, one of their assignments is they have to apply to 5 summer positions in their field, and making sure that they are getting out there before they graduate. So it's not like you don't have any experience, and you don't, and so that way they have the experience when they get out, and they have more success once they go to those theaters later on.
Fantastic. Well, I know, and one of the things about the Department of Theater is obviously it's very hands-on. It's like here in this department where you have, I mean, we've got Video One students that are actually behind the scenes running the show.
Yeah.
How else are they going to get the experience unless they're actually doing something like this? Very much obviously the same way here.
Exactly.
So I wanted to ask you about the performance that's going to be coming up, because I think this is so interesting that you all were able to come up with this from scratch.
Yes.
So Imagination Unleashed, kind of tell us about where the idea for this came.
Yes, so when we were doing our season selection, we always have us, the faculty, the 6 of our faculty, plus 2 student reps. And when we were in the process, like what's gonna work, we let our students submit ideas, et cetera, and then we go on what's gonna work. And our faculty brought up the idea, it was like, DayDay, you've wanted to teach a devised theater class. I've said that since I've came here in 2020. And so what if we did a devised theater class where we use whatever you guys make in that class as the production? So that's where it started. And that was in spring of 2024. And then in fall of 2024, we had the devised theater class. And in that class, I gave them all of an assignment to come up with like a hunch, like what is going to ground whatever we create. And we somehow fell into this idea of being stuck in life, or stuck, and how do you have the resilience to become unstuck in whatever situations that you're a part of. And that's how that ended up becoming the big crux of what the play is about, as well as we had the students come in and they did movement pieces. I'm like, okay, now go do some research based on different ways people can be stuck. Are they stuck in relationships? Are they stuck in jobs? Are they stuck in their own way? Are they stuck in their own way or their own mind? Et cetera. And then they brought in pieces, and then we put them on the board, and we're like, does this work for what we want to do? What is our intention for the audience when we create this work? And some ideas stayed, and some ideas didn't. And so we had to also navigate that. What happens if my own ideas sometimes didn't make it in there,
Right.
and how to navigate that when we are so passionate about what we're doing, but understanding that not every single idea that we have is meant for the show that we're creating now, and what to put on the back burner for later.
You know, that is interesting about how you're going to make those decisions. It's almost like if you're doing an editing bit and you're just like, I love all of this, but I've got to make a decision when it hits the editing floor.
Yep.
You know, seriously.
Yes.
And so how, well, with that, that's got to be really challenging to be able to do that, you know.
Yes, we started in the class with what we called credos, which are rules that we had. I'm like, one of the things we said was no festering. If you have an idea, don't fester on it. Don't be like, I have this idea, but I don't want to bring it up. You bring it up, because if you don't, then we don't even have a chance to work it. And then we had another credo that said, like, hang on tightly, but let go loosely. And so if you have this idea, and if it's not working, there was an idea that came in that people were like, no, we don't know about it. And then the person just went back out and kept refining it and refining and refining it and brought it back in. And then we finally were like, yes, that's it. And so they had the opportunity that even if their ideas got shut down, that they could still go work them and then bring them back in. It was like, no, this is why this works. And so it was such a fun process, but of course it was also stressful for both me, the students, of trying to figure out whose ideas work, and then also remembering that it's no one person's idea. Once it's in there, it's everyone's, and we can shape it the way that we want to. And so that was it was challenging, but yet rewarding at the same time.
So you said that this started like early,
Yep.
like in the fall.
Yes.
And so you've still been working on it. So when were you at a point where you were able to say, okay, this is something that we can work on, and now we need to start practicing and doing all of that?
Yeah.
I mean,
so with school, I want to say a week and a half before school ended in fall, we finally had the script.
okay.
And then spring is when we use the rehearsal process to then build it with the characters and things like that. So we had the script, and even then, I want to say 7 people from the class are also in the show, and then there are 3 people who are not a part of the class. And when they came in, we got really attached. We're like, yes, this makes sense. And then someone was like, so this word that you put here doesn't mean what you think it does. And because we were so used to just what we already created,
Yeah.
that none of us even realized that we made a mistake in it. And so even having someone from a cast member who was from the outside, then he came back and rewrote the scene and was like, here's what I think you guys were trying to do. And then we all we're like, oh, this works. And then we're like, oh, but we need this part from the old thing and this. And so even when we had the script, it still started to change because we had new people in it. And they started seeing things differently with the characters. Mm-hmm. So the shape of it was still the same. Most of the lines are still the same, but now they got to add to it as well. And so that was just really awesome.
You want to talk about serious buy-in, obviously, for something like that. Oh, and by the way, you all are still doing your fall performances, right? Because you got the season that's still going.
Yes.
So you've got all this stuff that's taking place, classes and all that. Oh, and by the way, we're building a play from scratch.
Yes.
Just another average day of the
Yes. Yes.
But I bet though that the students though, they must have just such a huge sense of pride of being able to do something like this.
Yes, and I will say that during our tech rehearsal, I want to say 2 days ago, one of the actors, I looked over at him and he was crying, and I went, "Oh, are you okay?" He was like, but we started having lights for the first time, and he was just like, "I am just so proud of what we created." And that was, when I looked at him, I was like, and that is why we do what we do. Right. It's that moment of just being proud, and so the buy-in, you're right, that buy-in, because again, some people's feelings probably got hurt because maybe their idea didn't fully come in, but then once we got it to a point that it's on its feet, I think almost everyone in the class was like, I am extremely excited and proud and honored to have been a part of this.
Assistant Professor of Theater at Arkansas State University and devised facilitator of Imagination Unleashed, DayDay Robinson is joining me today here on A-State Connections. We're going to continue talking about the performance and how you can see it. We'll be right back after this.
I think one of the things I learned at Arkansas State was life is 10% of what happens to you, 90% of how you respond to it, and that's just something that I live by.
A-State is home, and they're going to treat you like you're a part of the family.
Red Wolf Radio is a student-led organization at Arkansas State University wanting to hear your takes on pop culture, music, the news, and college life. Just about anything you can think of. Located in the Education and Communications building on campus, we are always looking for more volunteers. So if you're an Arkansas State University student, no matter the major, and this is something that interests you, shoot us an email at redwolfradio@astate.edu. That's redwolfradio@astate.edu. Let them hear you howl.
Live from the ASU-TV studios in the School of Media and Journalism, this is A-State Connections. And welcome back to A-State Connections on ASU-TV. I'm Jonathan Reeves, and today we're continuing our conversation with Assistant Professor of Theater at Arkansas State University, DayDay Robinson, as we're talking about Imagination Unleashed. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you.
Yes, of course.
I'm really digging this idea of being able to build something from scratch, because normally what you all would do is you would have like a lot of the plays that would be, that you'd be picking from. Mm-hmm. But this one, Imagination Unleashed, is going to be taking place, I guess, this weekend. Is that right? Kind of tell us about that, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the show.
Yes. So we open on Friday, and we, like I was saying, that we came up with that hunch of being stuck. And so what the idea behind the show became was this idea that there is these passengers that are stuck on a train, and it's like they're all in modern day clothing and they're all from like our era, but the train itself is from like the 1950s, and it's a little eerie, and they have this enigmatic conductor, and so the passengers wake up from nowhere, and they don't realize where they are, and they're just like, where's our tickets? Or we're on a train, so clearly we missed our stop, what's happening? And then they kind of realize that they're in a place that doesn't fully exist. Or they don't know what it is. They don't know if the train is real or not. And this conductor has like control over them. And he, not he, because our conductor is not human, or we don't know what our conductor is. It's an entity. And he says that the conductor says that not a human a few times, or like, oh, if I was a person, I would such and such. And they're like, wait, then what are you? But we never get that understanding of what he is. But what we do know that this conductor is a guide. And he takes our passengers into the specific memories of their lives, places in which have been holding them back. So it could be that they were in a relationship where they weren't fully listening to their partner, or their partner wasn't listening to them. And so they're able to re-see that memory and get outside perspective through the other passengers. And each of them have a ticket that they don't realize that they have on them. And the ticket isn't your stereotypical ticket. It is a metaphorical ticket. It is something, it has a symbolic, it has a symbolic meaning to whatever is holding you stuck or in that memory, whether it's grief or loss, whether it's like who you are as a person, whether it's not your own choices, you as a parent, etc. And there's so much there when it comes to what is keeping people stuck. And sometimes it's other people holding you back, and then sometimes it's yourself. Yeah. And that is what we explored. We wanted to explore so many different facets of how people can get stuck. Jobs, being in a job or not being able to find work. And I think there is one passenger in the train who actually talks about this idea of everyone says they want you to have experience, but no one's hiring you so you can get the experience. Right. And this circular motion that you're going through. And one of the things that was really fascinating about making this is because the students who brought some of these stories in, I was like, oh, you're going through some of the same stuff that I went through or am going through. And I think it connects the generations, because it's so easy to look at our Gen Alphas and our Gen Zs and all the gens, right, of what's going on, and be like, you're not doing what you're supposed to. But I'm like, after this, I realized there's some hard things that this generation is dealing with. Yeah. That connects us, that I'm like, I didn't realize, I didn't start dealing with this until I was like 25, and you're already dealing with this at 19 and 20. And this idea of that we're all connected if we just understood each other and took a second to listen to everyone's situation, that we can connect with each other. And so I think it's just something so fascinating about it.
When you saw that the script was finalized, and you were able to see kind of how this idea was finally coming together, what were your thoughts on this what would be now, stuck on a train, heading to nowhere, right?
Yes.
Something like that. Kind of tell us what your thoughts on what the final product has been like so far.
Yes, so far it's so different than writing, when you're writing in the room and you have all these ideas and you're writing, but to see it actually come to life, not just with lights, but with different actors and bodies on stage. It's been so fascinating in the sense of, this was nothing. I tell people all the time, I was like, not even 6 to 7 months ago, this idea was literally nothing. Like December, this idea was nothing. And now it's something. And I'm seeing these processes. It made me, myself, think about my own relationships and each person's memory. I'm like, have I ever been a part of this issue myself? And I think some of the students too was like, I remember one of the actors was like, oh, I did that to my partner. Right? To be able to like stop and be like,
Right.
Maybe I could have handled this differently, or maybe I can be better or do better or help someone else, or even if we don't understand something or that someone else is going through, our easy thing was like, no, you're being lazy or you're not doing what you're supposed to, instead of listening to how they got there. Yeah. And we might not agree, and that's okay. But to have an understanding, and I think all of us in the show, we're all starting to see different parts of our own lives, of how this show has been shaped through our own lives, and the things that we can do to make our lives better. And we ask ourselves, what's keeping us stuck?
Yeah.
And what are we willing to do to get out of that situation?
That is those are all great questions to be able to do that. And I think that's the best part of theater and those kind of performances, because they tie so much back to real life.
Yes.
And when you can leave and you have that relatability, like, you pick up on a character and you say, you know what, I know someone who's like that. Or dadgummit, I'm probably more like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So in this process, of course, you were teaching students and all that about this, but what did you learn personally, kind of building something from scratch and being able to do that? What did you learn from this?
Yes, what I learned was that we as humans we are creative. We are creative beings. I've learned that we need people. I always knew that theater was collaborative. Always. There's no doubt about the theater is collaborative because we have so many different entities working within the field. However, this made me really understand, I think the Vice is truly a true art form of collaboration, because in traditional theater, you get the play first, like you said. You have the play, and then you have people who are selecting what play it's going to be, and then a director comes in, you have the actor, but this one started from nothing. It started from a seed, from a hunch. And we had to collaborate to the point that our designers had to come into the class to see what it was that we were making so they could understand what they were designing for. Right. Our production meetings were changed, and which is why I don't call myself a director on this, because I didn't really direct. I had moments of direction, but I let the cast members also come out and look at scenes that weren't themselves. I'm like, does this look right? What do we need to do? And they also had moments to direct. And so for me, what it taught me was that theater can be even more collaborative than it actually is, and which is why I really like this process, because for me it felt like a full collaboration versus different aspects of theater then coming together.
So as we wrap this up, I would be remiss if I didn't ask about when the performances are going to be, where people can see them, and how can they get tickets for that?
Yes, okay, so if you Google A-State Theater, our Arkansas State University Theater, you can get to our website, and on our website you will have the access to buy tickets. Our performances start on February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day. Bring a loved one to come see it with you at 7:30. And so it's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Our Friday and Saturday performances are at 7:30, and then our Sunday is at 2:30 at the Simpson Theatre in the Fowler Center. And then we have 3 more performances next weekend, which I do not know the dates off the top of my head. I think it's the 21st to the 23rd.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So that sounds good. That's great. So, people can go and get tickets. They can get all that stuff at the box office and be able to go by and check that out.
And if you're a student at A-State, one of the awesome things about how we do things with students is that you get free tickets. So all you have to do is show your ID. Sure. So come if you don't have anything to do, or you just want to see something new. Come join us. We would love to have you.
DayDay Robinson, this has been such a blast. Thank you so much for being up here today to talk about this, and we can learn more about you and and the wonderful students that you have. We're really excited about this weekend's performance.
Yes,
so.
thank you. I'm excited, too.
Thank you so much for being here on that. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of A-State Connections. I do want to thank my guest, DayDay Robinson, for joining me here today. Also want to thank Instructor of Creative Media Production, Dustin Sullivan, and his amazing students in Video Production 1 who are behind the scenes running the show today. Also thanks to Broadcast Engineer Timmy Arquette, also Aiden Barber, and Graduate Assistant Reese Barnett for their help on the show today. Well, as we wrap up the show, we want to show you a preview of Imagination Unleashed from our friends at Creative Services here on the A-State campus. Thanks for joining us, and so long, everyone.
This play actually went through a process called devised theater. There is no hierarchy. We didn't start with a script. We started with what we called a hunch, and we did this in a devised class in fall of 2024. And our hunch in the class was this idea of being stuck and how to get unstuck. It's whether or not you're stuck in relationships, grief, loss, identity, all of these different aspects, and sometimes it's other outside obstacles like people or job security that is causing those, but sometimes it might be your own, you might be in your own way.
So being able to experience that, like seeing how the other people in the class wrote the characters, it made me, first of all, it made me want to do them proud by doing right by it. But then also, it was like I was able to see the characters grow from the ground up instead of having like a pre-established thing that I had to go research. I was able to research and write at the same time.
So I was kind of there from the beginning, which really helped me kind of understand the characters and really dig into what they would define themselves in through their clothing. It's been hard though because some of the characters like haven't been around for very long, so it was a lot of me figuring that out for the first time ever.
I'm like their guide, so they're all like stuck on the train, literally and like metaphorically, you know, and so I'm trying to help them like conquer whatever is keeping them stuck.
Starts off really, really interesting because we're all knocked out, and then we wake up in a daze, and then as the conductor guides us through different people's memories and stuff like that, we learn more about the other people on the train, and then we also have introspection.
Oh, the experience has been amazing. Like this, it's one I don't think I've ever been this excited for a show because it feels like I've added to a piece of this, and that like really makes this feel amazing to me. I can say that in a lot of scenes I'm yelling, which is always just kind of fun for me to get really into that.
Yeah, I've never like originated a character before, and it's so weird. So I got to sit down and I was like, okay, like, cause there's like supernatural elements to the train. And so I was like, how exactly does that work? And like, what powers do I have?
It's very Twilight Zone-esque, very otherworldly, kind of dealing with trying to face your problems that you try to push away.
You should come out to see the show because you should always support local theater. But besides that, you want to see something new, fresh, and exciting, this is the show to come watch.
I'd say I'd consider it pretty fun that this is the first time anyone's gonna see this. You get to be a part of that, so I just think that's fun, seeing something new.